This is Albert Bandura's Legacy by Teresa Silvestre. So, a little bit about Albert Bandura is that he was born in Mundane, Canada, which is a small province, on December 4th of 1925. He's very famous for his contributions to observational learning, social learning, thinking processes, and some of his most famous work was done with self-efficacy and the social learning theory, which we'll get more into. And he currently teaches at Stanford University. He's actually been there for quite a while. He started his work there in the 1970s, and he still continues to be a professor emeritus there. So his education, he began his path to psychology at the University of British Columbia in 1946. And when he began his career as a student, he actually just took up psychology courses out of convenience because he would carpool to school with friends who had really early classes. So he decided to take early classes, and some of the early classes that were offered were psychology. So, because of that, he became really interested in psychology, and that's actually what he got his bachelor's degree in. He then went on to get his PhD in psychology at the University of Iowa in 1952. Now, some of Albert Bandura's research and work. Bandura has made a huge contribution to psychology with his theory of social learning. So, in the theory of social learning, there's a lot of emphasis on human capabilities, the structural framework behind how we do what we do and why we do what we do, and as well as our thinking processes. So, what goes on in our minds when we're trying to figure out what we should do next. One of the most important experiments that he's known for is the Bobo doll experiment, which was actually focused on aggression and modeling. So it was very important for observational learning, and it showed how human behavior is learned through example, and it can occur either intentionally or accidentally. So with children, especially, that's what he focused on. He would have children observe adults hitting this Bobo doll, and then he would put the children in that room, and they would then act the same way towards the Bobo doll as the adults would. And we're actually going to watch a clip about it up next.
The model pummeled the doll with the mallet, flung it in the air, kicked it repeatedly, threw it down and beat it. It was once widely believed that seeing others vent aggression would drain the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to aggressive modeling is hardly cathartic. Exposure to aggressive modeling increased attraction to guns, even though it was never modeled. Guns had less appeal to children who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling. The children also picked up the novel hostile language.
So, as we see in that video, the child observed that the woman was beating up the Bobo doll, and then he proceeded to treat the Bobo doll the same way that the woman did. So, that is basically the gist of the Bobo doll experiment, and it just showed how many times kids will model behaviors that they see from other people, and that's something that can really affect our behavior. So, with modeling, as I said before, they will have the observations of the model, and then that will lead them to repeating the behavior that they saw. So, the observer can acquire the responses that weren't performed or displayed previously, and it can strengthen or weaken existing responses. So, with the social learning model, there are three different factors that affect that are displayed in this theory. So, the first one is the cognitive factors, which is just our knowledge of expectations and attitudes. So, what we already know. Also, environmental factors such as social norms, access in the community, influence on others, and the environment, and our behavioral factors. So, our skills, our practice, and our self efficacy. And on that note, we are going to move on to self efficacy. So, self efficacy refers to your feeling of adequacy or efficiency and competence in coping with life. Many people use the term self efficacy very loosely when also talking about self confidence because there are a lot of similarities. It's basically just how confident you feel in your ability to do something. So, by being able to meet and maintain our performance, increases our self efficacy. But we do not meet or maintain our performance level, our self efficacy can actually decrease. So, we can also refer to our perception of control in our lives. So, if someone perceives that they have large control over their lives and they're in control, they will most likely have a self efficacy that's higher than somebody who feels that they do not have as much control in their life. So, with the self efficacy model, there are four different aspects that affect our self efficacy and our judgments. The first one being our performance accomplishment. So, that is when we refer back to our previous experience. So, for example, if you're a swimmer, and every single time you get first place in the 50-meter freestyle, then every single time you're going to go in with a higher self efficacy because of your previous accomplishments of winning first place. Vicarious experience refers to comparing yourself to others. So back again to the swimming example, if you're at swim practice and you see that your teammates are effectively doing the backstroke, then you're going to feel like you can also do it because of the modeling they're showing. So if you perceive yourself to be on the same level as them, you're also going to feel like you're able to do that activity even if you're a novice at doing backstroke. Now, the next one is social persuasion, which can also be perceived as social support, and that's just coaching and evaluative feedback. So, if your coach on the swim team is telling you, good job, keep it up, you're doing an amazing job, and you're constantly getting that reinforcement, you're going to have a higher self efficacy. Now, finally, the last part is physiological and emotional states. So, this is how you perceive your physiological and emotional states. So, if you perceive your heart rate increasing and your hands getting a little clammy as you being nervous, that could bring your self efficacy down. But if you perceive those physiological responses as you being prepared and you feeling ready to go into the swim meet, then you are more likely to have a higher self efficacy. So all four of these factors intertwine and they actually result in your behavior and performance. Now, with regards to how Albert Bandura viewed women, he was never really clear about how he felt towards women or if he had very specific feelings towards them, but he did show that there were gender differences between men and women in regards to self efficacy. So he showed that women that were older and had baby faces, so rounder cheeks, bigger eyes, smaller nose, felt like they had more control over their lives because a more youthful appearance in the later years showed definite advantages both socially and in the workplace because everyone just perceived you to be younger. But the same is not for younger women with baby faces because they actually have a lower self-efficacy because they feel like they're not treated the same as other women in their age group because they're perceived younger. Now, women also felt higher self efficacy in traditionally female work environments. So, this would be something like being a baker or being a server, something that, or a nurse, something that we typically view women playing that role in society. And they had lower self efficacy in traditionally male settings. So, being a construction worker, a gardener, electrician, and overall competency with computers. Now, for men, on average, they scored higher than women in self efficacy overall, but there were differences in the peaks. So, men would typically peak their self efficacy around their 20s, and over time, they're gonna lower their self efficacy, but the same thing happens with women. Men also felt a high self efficacy in both traditionally male and female work environments, so they wouldn't have a problem playing the doctor or playing the nurse. They felt equally self efficacied in both. And men also scored higher than women on self efficacy than women when younger. So, especially in childhood and adolescence, men felt like they had a higher self efficacy than women. So, Albert Bandura believed that there were four different age groups in which our development occurred and how our personality over time developed. Now, these stages are part of the self efficacy stages, which we've already talked about self efficacy. So, if with childhood, infancy obviously falls under our childhood, and he believed that during infancy we learned to model behavior through repetition. So, the first time that an infant tries a certain behavior, such as smiling, they will notice how everybody else reacts to them smiling. So then they'll start to model that behavior even more and they'll start to imitate it even more. And that's how it'll become part of their personality. They start to smile more. By the age of 2, that's when children actually start to develop enough skills to imitate behavior. And when they start to imitate behavior, this behavior can happen very quickly. It almost seems as if it's immediate imitation. So during the childhood, the modeling can actually lead to immediate imitation, as we saw in the video with the Bobo doll experiment. So the behaviors that children see are as reinforcing, those are the ones they choose to imitate, and they will change over time, obviously, because no longer will baby talk get reinforcement as much. Instead, they'll learn to talk more like a young adult, and they'll start to change their behaviors in order to fulfill the requirements that they think they need to fulfill because of society. So during childhood, it's very important the way that the mother and the teacher raise the child, because infancy is very dependent on the mother. So if the mother has high self-efficacy, she is more likely to have a child who also has high self-efficacy because she feels confident in her abilities, and that confidence transcends into her child. Now with teaching, when the kid starts to go to school and he becomes a student, he also needs to feel like he is being reinforced by his teachers. And if his teachers feel that they are high self-efficacy in teaching, then they are more likely to transcend that onto the students as well. So then the children will have a high self-efficacy as well. Now in adolescence, these are weird stages of self-efficacy because you are trying to meet new demands and new pressures. You're going to high school, you're about to graduate, you're trying to figure out your career choice, and sometimes also the awareness of sex can also have a huge impact on your self-efficacy. So this stage depends on the level of self-efficacy established in childhood. So if your teachers and your mother and your parents and family encouraged you to have a high self-efficacy and you always believed in your ability to meet the demands, you are more likely to continue doing so in adolescence. And if you had low self-efficacy, you are more likely to continue to have a low self-efficacy in adolescence. Now, in young adulthood, this is where there's a lot of adjustments that need to happen, and you might be getting into a new career field, you might become a parent, you might get married. So, people who are high in self efficacy will have more successful outcomes of these experiences. So, they will successfully get married and not want to divorce 6 months into it. Whereas people that are low will not be able to adjust properly and may even fail to adjust. So, their new lifestyle may not be fit for them. So, if they do get married, maybe within those 6 months, they don't feel like they're cut out for it and they might want a divorce. Now, in middle adulthood, that's where we start to reevaluate our careers, our family, our social lives. We've gotten into this routine, and at this point, we're trying to see what changes we can make in that routine. So, we might be redefining our goals in order to reassess for our new skills and find new ways to enhance our self efficacy. So, here, during our young and middle adulthood, we are basically peaking in our efficacy, in our self efficacy. We are reaching a point where we feel like that's where we need to be. And we do changes in our lifestyle in order to get to that place that we want to be at. Now, when we get into old age, actually, our self efficacy may start to decline, and that is because reassessment of your self efficacy is pretty hard at this stage because there are many mental and physical declines that occur in old age. So, this may cause you to have lower self efficacy. Bandura stated that if we no longer feel like we're able to do something properly, we may even stop trying to attempt it. So many times with older people, an example that I saw from the book was if they no longer feel like they can meet sexual demands of their partner, they may stop trying to have sex because they won't feel confident enough in their abilities to do so. So they rather prevent the humiliation or the feelings of failing by just avoiding it overall. So in old age, it's very hard to assess our self efficacy because we start to avoid many things that we may no longer feel confident in doing. But overall, what Bandura believed had the greatest impact in our self efficacy was actually this childhood stage and our infancy. So he did, in fact, believe that infancy played a huge role in our personality and its development. Now, can we change our personality? See, this is something that I very, very much like about Albert Bandura. He didn't really focus much on how your overall personality would change, if you would somehow become happier, or if you become more giving. It's more of a factor of looking at your behaviors and how those behaviors can change over time. So his main focus wasn't really on will your personality change? It's more on will your behaviors change? Will you learn to change this behavior that is not giving you a positive outcome and tweak it a little so that you can get that positive outcome that you're looking for? So he believed that behaviors can be changed through techniques based on social learning. So an example of this would be systematic desensitization. So when someone has agoraphobia, for example, they're going to take these small incremental steps that can change these fearful behaviors. So with someone who has agoraphobia, which is the fear of snakes, you might not go right ahead and show them a snake. You might just start off by talking about the characteristics of a snake, of where it lives, of what it looks like. And then once they can properly imagine a snake without them feeling fearful, that's when you might get a picture into play, and then you might get a fake snake, and then the end goal would be showing them a real snake and making sure that that real snake is not causing any fearful behaviors in them, such as running away or avoidance. So what Bandura really believed in was our personality can change, but that personality change is rooted in our behaviors. So once we change our behaviors, we can start to change our personality per se. So, like I stated, his idea of thinking that we can change our behaviors and that can lead to a personality change is something that I find very interesting of him, and that's a main reason why I chose to do this project on him, because unlike many other psychological theorists, he actually focused on the causes of our behaviors and how those behaviors can be changed. He does not really attempt to work on any underlying unconscious conflicts, such as Freud and many other uh, behaviorist psychologist that believed that many of our issues were rooted in our subconscious. He actually believed that it wasn't really much of an unconscious. He's not focusing on that. He's more focusing on the behavior or the symptom that a person is feeling, and then using social learning and that approach, he will try to change that behavior. And that is something that I find very useful, especially in any type of therapy. Now, Bandura's views on religion, there was not much on his views on religion. He did explain in an interview that his mother was very religious, but he does not say that he is part of an organization or that he is of a certain religion. But in an interview a while back, he did say that a reason why many people go into religion and they have religious practices is because religion can give people a purpose. So, religion gives them an intrinsic purpose and it makes them feel like they have some sort of social support by going to their mass, by going to church groups, by participating in their church. So, he believed that people who were religious did it for these reasons. So, overall, Bandura didn't have very concrete views on religion. He is not openly religious, but he does believe that people who are religious, they are doing it because it gives them a sense of purpose, and it's mostly that intrinsic purpose that they are searching for within their religion. Now, when comparing Albert Bandura, I chose to compare him to B.F. Skinner because they have very similar ways of doing their research and they're behaviorist at the end of the day. So I thought it was very interesting to see how they were different but how they were similar at the same time. So Albert Bandura focused a lot on social learning, whereas B.F. Skinner was very famous for his operant conditioning. So, Albert Bandura believed that we can learn our behavior by observing the indirect consequences, and that we can learn all at once rather than over time. And observation and modeling can lead to us learning behaviors. Now, those learned behaviors will be stored and then they will be used as needed in situations that we feel are best fit for that type of behavior. Now, B.F. Skinner believes that behavior is learned to operate environment and produce or avoid consequences. So, we may either choose to do something because of the consequences, or we may choose to avoid something because of the consequences. He believed there needed to be reinforcement for behavior to actually be learned. So, this is something very different from Albert Bandura because Skinner believed that learning had to occur over time. It didn't occur all at once, how Bandura sees it. And he also believed that the learning would happen in these steps, and those steps involved reinforcement in order for that behavior to occur. Now, their similarities is that they are both behavioral psychologists. They enjoyed seeing how behavior is developed and how environmental stimulus can affect it because they both took in the environmental factor and seeing how that shapes us and our personality. Now, overall, they do have very similar views because they do believe that a lot of our behavior is rooted in our environment and the type of enforcement that we had within our environment. Now, it's just the means to which the environment affects us and how quickly it affects us where they differ. So, I have a friend, we're going to call her Jess. Jess, she, in my opinion, and using Albert Bandura's views of self efficacy, I would say she has very high self efficacy. Now, she is an only child. She has a very loving mother, and her mother had high self efficacy when she had her. So, when she was teaching her daughter how to do everything, she always tells us stories about how she felt so confident in being a mother and how she feels still to this day confident in being a good mother. So that obviously transcended into Jess because she has a great relationship with her professors. She understands the material in her classes fairly easily, and that leads to her having good grades. So, because of that, she has always felt like she's able to meet the demands of her environment. And anytime that she's not able to meet those demands, she will try to find ways to actually meet them. She is very, very innovative when it comes to fixing her schedule or fixing anything that she needs to be fixed in her life in order for her to be performing to the best of her abilities. So I would say that Bandura would say she has high self efficacy. Now, with modeling, she does model after many different role models that she has. So she'll model her behavior with her professors, family members, and even friends. She'll use them to model her behavior. So she'll go to office hours and ask for professors for advice on what she should be doing or what she needs to improve on. She'll also do the same with family members if there's a discussion or if she feels like she's being rude to them. I've seen her actually be like, okay, what do you want from me? So that she can model her behavior to a way that's best fit for them. She also models herself um, in a physical appearance to look like other people sometimes. She'll look for fashion inspiration on YouTube. She's always looking at, oh, good ideas to what to wear to this place or what to wear to that place, or spring 2019 lookbooks and things like that. And she also watches YouTube makeup tutorials. So that's another form of modeling that she does. She tries to model not only her behaviors towards some of the people that she admires, but she also tries to look a certain way. And she models that physical appearance by what she sees on YouTube videos and sometimes even her Instagram feed. Now, her comedy, she is very, very funny and she models jokes after some of her favorite comedians. She watches a lot of stand up videos, some of them are on YouTube, and she also has taken up acting classes and stand up classes, and she sometimes goes to stand up. She's very funny, and I would say that part of it has to do with her modeling and how successful she has been in modeling the mannerisms and the characteristics of all these other great comedians that she takes little bits and pieces from. So, the main takeaway about Albert Bandura and what he is about is that he has made huge contribution to social learning by creating the social learning theory. He's also made contributions to observational learning and has done that through experiments such as the Bobo doll. He also has made huge improvements with modeling and has shown us how modeling behavior can affect us starting at a very young age, such as infancy. He does believe that the environment has a huge influence on who we are and what we do. And he has also de emphasized the unconscious. He doesn't put as much emphasis onto that aspect, and he more sees it as what the environment does and how that affects you and how that's going to have you perform or act a certain way. He also emphasizes our surroundings, parents, and experiences, which is everything that social learning model and observational learning is about. So here we have a little model with the social learning theory, just again to recap the main learnings from that, which is our behavior is affected by our environmental factors, but our behavior also affects our environmental factors. Environmental factors have an effect on personal factors, and personal factors also influence our environmental factors. And we also have that dynamic between personal factors and behavior where they both have an impact on each other. So that is the main takeaway from this PowerPoint presentation. So thank you for staying till the very end and watching my video. These are my references if you guys would like to watch more videos or hear more about him and also learn more about him and what he has to say. Thank you.